Hi, it's Will from the Yukon Gold podcast. Now, I've been doing this for a long time, but if you haven't, there's an easier way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's completely free, it's online and mobile, and there's creation tools that will allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google, Stitcher, Amazon, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Now, if that seems like a good idea to you, follow this link below and download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Welcome back to another episode of the Yukon Gold podcast with Will Summer. Yukon Gold is about creating a sustainable future for everyone on planet Earth. We help people to reach their full potential by delivering the gold standard in renewable energy design and education. Please follow, like, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and check us out at yukongoldenergy.com. Today on the podcast, I would like to talk about the situation going on in Texas with their rolling blackouts and why the situation is not caused by wind power per se, but the situation is actually the result of a supply and demand imbalance. So, in my readings, Texas has become its own grid, its own isolated grid since 1970 to avoid dealing with the federal government, which comes back to its very much isolationist and secessionist sentiments. Now, the Texas interconnected system was for a long time operated by two discrete entities, one for northern Texas and one for southern Texas. But underneath the Federal Power Act signed by Franklin Roosevelt in 1935, the Texas utilities avoided being subjected to federal rules by uniting these two grids. And they moved towards self-reliance in the early days on coal, natural gas, and oil resources from its fuel power plants. Now, the ERCOT, or the Electric Reliability Commission of Texas, was formed in 1970 in the wake of a major blackout in the Northeast in November of 1965. And it remains beyond the jurisdiction of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which succeeded the Federal Power Commission and regulates interstate electric transmission. There are historically some interdependence, but for the most part, the backbone of the Texas grid is isolated from the eastern transmission and the western grid. Now, people are saying this is due to wind turbines, not running or freezing up. And that's blatantly wrong. What I would like to point out is that Texas primarily is run on natural gas and coal. And it's supplemented by wind and renewable energy. Now, I'm not saying there isn't issues with reliability of renewable sources, because wind is a intermittent resource. It only produces power when the wind blows. And solar is an intermittent resource. It only produces power when the sun is shining. Now, in order to make these sources more reliable, a grid-tied battery, such as a megawatt battery storage solution, would very much increase the reliability of such intermittent sources. Now I'm just trying to find the figures for where Texas is sitting in terms of the breakdowns on the electrical grid. Here we go. So looking at a monthly production of October 2020, 52% of the power is produced from natural gas for approximately 20 million megawatt hours. 23% is from wind and other non-hydroelectric renewables, so that's solar and wind, and that's just about 8.6 million megawatt hours. And then coal is 17% and other is 8%. Are the frozen wind turbines to blame? No. This is a red herring. There are times of the year when the wind is extremely important energy resource, powering half the state's electric supply. This week, operators plan for much less wind capacity in the range of 6,000 megawatts. Firm resources, like hard sources, gas, coal, and nuclear, failed to supply roughly 30,000 megawatts, which contributed to the bulk of the problem. Why was Texas not prepared for this? In 2011, a similar deep freeze event caused widespread power outages in Texas, but the extent was not as great. The grid operators learned some lessons from the experience and made adjustments, but they clearly underestimated the demand could rise even higher. So there was just not enough planning on how interdependent our natural gas and electrical systems are. And this is one of the drawbacks of being an isolated grid. So the power that you produce has to go somewhere. Whether you use it right now or later is really dependent on the supply and demand. And it fluctuates throughout the day, morning through night, different times of the year. And if there's a winter storm, obviously there's going to be more demand for heating. And this is what caused these rolling blackouts. So what does this mean for the future? Well, they could become less interdependent or more interdependent on being connected to the rest of the North American grid, but I don't see that happening. Texas is very much an independent state. Going forward, I do see more renewables going to Texas, despite the image of wind turbines. Like I said, they could be very easily supplemented with a large battery backup. And what I'm going to do for this article after this episode is I'm going to put a bunch of links to the information where I've got got this information from. So what you need to know right now is there are 2 million Texas households without power. Dallas is urging residents to reduce their electrical usage. The Houston mayor is seeking answers to outages that were handled. Texas cities open emergency shelters. There are 100,000 Fort Worth, Texas residents receiving boil water notices, and there's a state sending extra resources to help across Texas. So this happened roughly 2 days ago. Yeah, so you should be prepared to be without power for the end of the week, probably. But that is subject to the Utility Commission. Now, I'm from British Columbia, and the main difference here is we have hydropower, which is, again, a source of firm power in the sense that you can store water behind the dam in the form of gravitational potential energy and release it throughout the year and fluctuate to match demand throughout the day and throughout the week and throughout the month. So anyways, I'd like to thank you for listening. This has been the Yukon Gold podcast with Will S. Yukon Gold is about creating a sustainable future for everyone on planet Earth. We help people to reach their full potential by delivering the gold standard in renewable energy design and education. Please follow, like, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And check us out at yukongoldenergy.com. Cheers.